July 18th. The moon is in Scorpio all day, making 9 different aspects out of the 14 cosmic aspects we have on the roster for today. We want to keep in mind that the moon in Scorpio is super intense. We are deep diving into the mental plane. We are deep diving into our psyche, into our heart space, into our soul. Why? Because the moon in Scorpio has the power of alchemy. We're able to dive into the not so nice parts in order for us to really shine a bright light on the darkness, to turn that pain into power, and to really transform the way that we think, the way that we feel, and of course, how it is that we're going to move forward. Does it feel good when the moon is in Scorpio? Absolutely not. But what happens is we feel pretty low, we feel pretty conflicted, we feel a little bit overwhelmed and intense, and then we break through. There's an empowerment that happens here because we take our power back. So that being said, we just moved into the taking action stage of our manifestations. And now we are given the green light to go ahead and start creeping forward, making good headway in establishing and integrating the new path, the new intentions, the new passions, the new desires that we just gave birth to last week. So the moon is definitely the star of the show here today. We want to keep in mind that it's likely going to put a lot of pressure on our physical bodies. It's going to keep us a little bit heavy, a little bit weighted, a little bit overwhelmed. That being said, right out of the gate, the moon goes ahead and makes an aspect with Venus, who is currently still in Leo. Again, she is looking to wrap up her life lessons here. We have a lot to learn. We have to put the pieces together. And this is going to be an ideal situation and conversation between the moon and Venus. And this is a conversation that kind of leads us into what Venus has experienced while in Leo. So again, she's let her hair down, she's fancy free, she's letting her heart lead, there's new passions, there's new desires. She's definitely putting herself first. And because of this new outlook, this new attitude that she has really jumped into, the moon in Scorpio really wants to dive into maybe some of the things that we've been ignoring, trying to have a good time. Again, Venus and Leo, a little bit extreme because we're throwing caution to the wind. Things have gotten serious. We want to be a little bit more playful, but purposely setting out to be a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more playful, a little bit more passionate means that we're kind of not paying attention to some of the roles and responsibilities that just got too heavy for us, that we just got too overwhelmed with. So this conversation between the moon, between Venus, is really kind of allowing us to see an aha moment. There's a potential genius that happens here. We are kind of exploring our emotional depths, the emotional depths in our psyche. We're recognizing right now where it is that we ourselves have kind of blocked ourselves in the past from being happy, from being playful, from being creative, from being passionate. And of course, Venus's time in Leo has done nothing but show us where it is that we've lost the luster for life, where it is that we were no longer excited, where it is we were no longer passionate. And of course, we're trying to re-spark and rekindle that fire within us. So Venus goes ahead after this little encounter, recognizing where it is that, she has really done a beautiful effort, if you will, kind of transmuting some of the heaviness into light, some of the pain into pleasure. Venus goes ahead and bumps into Pluto. The interesting thing here is that Pluto naturally rules over the moon in Scorpio. So there's a lot of power here, but we want to keep in mind, Pluto is the great destroyer. He shows us where an absolute certain death is needed in the way we think, in the way we feel, in the way that we act, in the way that we behave, in order to actually align with the new vision, with the new dreams, with the new power that we need to be standing in order to actually move forward. So Venus, of course, she's all about love. She's all about her relationships. She's all about finding new value, new worth in herself. And of course, seeing where it is that she's going to have to stand up take the control back, take the power back, and make some serious changes where her relationships are concerned. This is about reestablishing a new energy exchange. And this isn't going to feel good because it highlights for us where it is we've given our power away, where it is that we've been maybe too obsessive, too attached to some of our relationships. Again, very much integrating those in our identity. And that's why we're afraid to detach. We don't know who we are outside of these relationships and how it is that we've been functioning within them. However, from this tension point, from this aha moment, Venus and Pluto are kind of hashing it out, and Pluto is trying to illuminate for Venus where it is that now she has the opportunity to stand up for herself. She has the opportunity to put her own wants, needs, and desires first. She has the opportunity to reclaim all of the power in which she's given away in every single relationship that she gave it away in, thinking that if she gave the best part of herself away, that people wouldn't have a reason to leave. This is a huge aha moment. This very, conflicting, not so nice conversation between these two are leading us to a learning point where it is that we have to integrate these aha moments, these flashes from our past relationships, where it is that we haven't advocated for ourselves, all the opportunities that we had to step up that we just didn't. And when we realize this in our uncomfortable state, it kind of pushes us into a tension point where we have to make a change. That is where new cycles emerge. That is where new integration kind of emerges. And again, this is going to provide us with a physical opportunity in our physical realm with the physical relationships that are on spotlight right now in order for us to be tested, for us to walk the walk and talk the talk. So it's likely that our boundaries are going to be tested, and we are going to be given an option to either continue to give our power away or step into the power, take that power back, and really set a new guideline on how it is that our relationships are going to operate from here. So back to the moon for a second. The moon in Scorpio is going to go ahead and bump into Neptune. Neptune is retrograde in her place of power in Pisces. Now this is water on water. The moon is water, Scorpio is water, Neptune is water, Pisces is water. What does this tell us? It is a very highly emotional and intuitive time. This is a time where we kind of get lost within ourselves. This is where we're kind of going into the darkness, realizing where it is we've created lies and deceptions and delusions for ourselves. Why? Because sometimes it's better to live in imaginary land than it is living in reality. Why? Because in reality, you have to take accountability for yourself. You have to be responsible for your actions, for your words, for your energy. And we're a little bit overwhelmed because the moon in Scorpio wants to do that deep dive in the psyche, in the heart space, in order to see where it is that the transformation needs to take place, where it is that we need to, create more distance between the old habits, the old emotions, the old ideas, and create a little bit more space for the new to actually move in and integrate. This is going to be a little bit of a conflict inside of us because we're really struggling at this point to stay in touch with our reality. There's a huge illumination right now where it is that we've been too comfortable kind of sticking around in situations because we see the potential. How many of us have gotten in relationships because we've seen the potential in a person that they failed to see in themselves? And then 2-3 years later, these people haven't changed. We're asking them, how come you won't change? There's so much potential. And they say, listen, you knew what you were getting involved with when you got involved with me. You've seen the red flags. You've seen the cautionary note. But we as humans think that we see the potential, so they must see it too. We see the potential, so they must want to change in order to transform into that potential. And sometimes we get stuck in situations because we continue to want to see what could be instead of what is. So the moon getting in this conversation with Neptune isn't going to feel very good. We're going to want to retreat from our realities here for a second to move into our inner realm and really take a good look at where it is we've become too comfortable with falling in love with potential and not accepting things as they are for what they are instead of what it is we want them to be. So we shift over to Mercury at this point. Mercury joins us on this stage of this beautiful soap opera. Mercury, of course, is in Cancer. So we're a little bit emotional, super hypersensitive. We're relying on our intuition, our gut instincts to trigger something in us. And of course, we're going to take that information up to the mental plane where Mercury rules and really see how it is we think and how it is we feel about it. So Mercury in Cancer bumps into Venus. And again, Venus is in Leo. She is really trying to visit all the other planetary bodies to see where it is we have to have these last conversations before she goes ahead and she shifts into Virgo. Now, Mercury in Cancer still is very focused on the home, still very focused on our relationships, on where it is that boundaries need to be put in place and where it is that they need to be enforced. This is also showing us where it is that we have to really start taking care of ourselves. And of course, Venus, she's all about that self-worth, that self-love, but she's learning a lot while in Leo. And this particular aspect, this particular conversation between the two is really going to help us be a little bit more reflective over her time in Leo. We want to be a little bit nostalgic at this point with Mercury in Cancer, because in order for us to figure out how it is we got here, we have to look back. In order for us to figure out how it is that we're going to move forward, breaking the cycle, breaking the chain of some of the toxicity that we've been in, some of the trauma bonds that we've been in, we have to figure out how it is that we got here. And how it is we got here is our weak ass boundaries. We haven't been advocating for ourselves. We haven't been protecting ourselves. We haven't been speaking out and communicating what it is we want, what we need, and what it is we desire. We're talking about basic needs here. And not that I want to digress and go on a rant here, but Mercury moving into Cancer is when we've seen all of this Cuba spotlight emerge. What better instance can we use on the great global stage right now than a whole country asking for basic needs, recognizing that they have to speak up and speak out, get their message heard all across the world. Why? Because their foundation is crumbling. Their people are suffering. They've been denied basic rights. And because Mercury is about communication, because Cancer and energy is the mother energy, where it is that we have to nurture ourselves, nurture those that we love, build strong foundations where we can pour into ourselves and take care of others at the same time, where it is that we have built foundations that are likely now crumbling because they were built on falsehoods, on lies, on delusions, on deceptions. Mercury now in Cancer wants to speak up and speak out about this. So even though we're seeing a prime example with Cuba on the greater grander stage here, we're seeing it in our own lives. We've been tested. We've had new boundaries implemented, and now we're being tested on how sure we are that we are willing to stand up for ourselves. And Venus, of course, being in Leo, she just wants to follow her heart. She just wants to do what it is that makes her happy. She just wants to really nourish the mind, body, and soul. She wants to align with her heart space and do what's right. So Mercury in Cancer bumping into Venus in Leo right now. This is a difficult conversation. It is a heartfelt conversation. It really does a number on the heart space. It does a number on the mental plane. But we have to be aware of the issues that are not working in the world in order for us to come up with solutions. And in that moment, the moon in Scorpio bumps into the true node. The true node, of course, is showing us where it is that we need to align ourselves in order to reach our futuristic vision. And the moon in Scorpio is kind of saying, okay, wow, there's a lot of darkness emerging. There's a lot of parts within the shadow that are creeping up to the surface. And again, I don't want to continue, to rant too much here, but at the same time, the moon in Scorpio is the prime position for us to take a good look at the unconscious collective, all the trauma rising to the surface right now for transformation. We have to do something about it. But we have to acknowledge the darkness within the collective, within our individual selves, before we can come up with solutions. So the moon bumping into the true node right now is kind of reminding us, okay, so what kind of future do you want to be living in? You know that you don't want to be living in this one because the pain is too much. The trauma is still alive. The corruption, the betrayal, the lies, too much. So if you don't want to be living in a state where those particular parts of self and of the collective are raging and leading the way, then what are we going to do about it? Where can we change? Because the change needs to happen in the heart and in the head before we're going to see the change manifest in our physical realities. So this is a major turning point for us. It is opening us up to learning about the dysfunction, about the darkness, about the corruption that lies within us and lies within the collective, in order for us to accept responsibility that we had something to do with this, either by A, not realizing that it was happening at all, which is just an illusion, B, that we knew it was happening, but we didn't think we could do anything about it, so we're just going to turn our heads or put our heads back in the sand, or C, we knew damn well what was going on, and we tried to do it, but nobody listened to us, so we decided to stay silent, which is getting no one anywheres. And again, this is happening in our own individual lives, but also on the greater, grander stage, on the collective scale. So we can take cues from what's going on in the world right now and recognize that we are just fragments of the greater, grander collective. What's going on within us is going on within our neighbor, which is going on within our country, which is going on within the world. This is a humanitarian problem. And we have a great humanitarian focus coming up this week as we build towards the full moon in Aquarius. So the moon goes ahead after this very awakening moment, bumping into the true node and having the true node ask us, okay, so you don't want to live in this reality. What reality do you want to live in? Let's get a greater, grander vision, a dream, a goal that we want to work to, and come up with solutions on how it is that we can take baby steps in order to get there. So the moon in Scorpio goes ahead and trines Mercury in Cancer. This is a good energy. This is a blending of energy. First of all, our hearts are absolutely broken in the moment where we realize that our shadow selves have been leading us in our lives, where the darkness has had more power. And having that aha moment is awakening us to taking our power back. This trine is a blending of energies with the mental plane. Mercury ruling over the mental plane, ruling over information, helping us to see where it is that we have to really figure out how it is we think and how it is we feel about a situation before we can go ahead and speak about it, before it is we can communicate about it. But a transformation is happening. Aha moments are taking place. And when we are prepared to speak up and to speak out, you best believe that we are speaking up and speaking out with actual facts, because our mind, body, and soul now agree with what is going on, the information coming in, how it is that we are feeling about it. And we are stepping into a place of power where we're able to speak up louder, speak up with more clarity, speak up with more confidence, implementing the boundaries that we are exercising to put in place in order to protect ourselves, and making sure that we have the basic wants, needs, and desires to build upon a foundation in which is going to make us feel safe and secure moving forward as we grow and build our dream and our vision. In that moment, the moon in Scorpio squares Saturn. Saturn, of course, the Lord of Karma, showing us where roles and responsibilities are still very heavy on our shoulders. Saturn wants to show us where it is that we're held back, where it is that there's obstacles, where it is that there's challenges. Saturn is retrograde in Aquarius. The Aquarian energy is society. It is the collective. It is our social responsibility. And right now, any time that there is a square, it's a tension point. And through that tension point of banging our head against a wall, of having Saturn, the military grandfather, remind us of why we can't and why we shouldn't and why we have to practice and why we have to think it over and why it is that we're never going to get past this and why it is that we shouldn't, try to improve. This is a negative Nancy narrative. And we're being challenged. And let me tell you, The moon in Scorpio placements, period, we rise to that challenge. You tell us we can't and we will. You tell us we shouldn't and we definitely should. You tell us that there is a block there, we're going to break it down. You tell us that we have rules, we're going to break them. There's a little bit of rebellion that comes out in us. There's a little bit of aggressiveness that comes out because guess what? We are not going to stay in this same situation. We are not going to stand back. We are not going to put our heads in the sand. Now, once you see something, you can't unsee it. Once you know something, you can't unknow it. We've been awakened to too much of the darkness, too much of the shadow parts within ourselves, within the collective. We can't turn our heads any longer. So yes, this is going to be frustrating. Yes, it's going to feel a little bit conflicting in us, but you best believe that this tension point is only going to motivate us more, is only going to empower us more to stand up, to take a stand for ourselves, for other people, for the collective, in making the right kind of changes so that no one has to suffer in the way that our people, ourselves, have suffered in the past. Now, here's where things get interesting. The moon goes ahead and bumps into Chiron. Chiron is the wounded healer. He just went retrograde. He's in Aries. What does this mean? It means that we are essentially exposing ourselves. We're exposing the trauma. We're exposing the pain. We're exposing the identity that we've taken on, sitting in our pain, sitting in our trauma, carrying that emotional baggage around. Yes, they are very deep wounds. But when we rip the Band-Aid off, when we recognize that they haven't healed with the months and months and months of having a Band-Aid on it, we recognize that we need to take a different route on healing. We are going to heal them. We are going to be triggered in order to heal it. Chiron going retrograde is no joke. It is our spiritual warrior that gets poked and prodded until we can't stay quiet, till we can't create imaginative narratives around our pain and suffering. We can't make excuses anymore. We have to rise up. And out of this particular conversation between the moon, between Chiron, after, of course, we just bumped into Saturn and really got ticked off of him telling us what we can't do, what we shouldn't do, where it is that we're never going to grow, where it is that we're never going to change society or our individual narratives. We're all fired up. So the moon and Chiron reach this, kind of hype point. It is a tension. It's a heated discussion, if you will. But damn, we learn a lot. We learn a lot about ourselves. We learn a lot about the crutch that we've created from our pain and from our trauma. So many of us are so deeply integrated into our pain and egoic identity that we don't know who it is that we would be without that sob story, without that trauma, without, the narrative of I am the way I am because this is what happened to me as a kid and this is what happened to me in my last relationship and this is what happened to me in my life. They are just stories. You aren't who it is that you were at the time of that pain. You aren't who it is that you were at the time of that trauma, but yet you continue to tell the story. You continue to keep it alive. This particular aspect is not going to allow us to do that anymore. We have a realization where it is that we are keeping ourselves as a victim, as a prisoner. And in this particular conversation between the moon and between Chiron, we have the realization that we don't want to live that storyline anymore. We don't want to carry that baggage anymore. We won't want to have those memories. We don't want to have to tell that story. We don't want to have to continue to remind ourselves of the pain and suffering that we've been through in order to look at ourselves in the mirror and create excuses for who it is that we haven't become yet. A lot of us do it. I do it myself. How many of us just get to the point where we're ready to make a change and then we kind of, retreat back into the, oh, well, I can't because the last time I tried this, I suffered, disappointment or I wasn't able to do it. And I wasn't able to do it because, my mother told me when I was a kid that I was never going to be anything. Well, guess what? That is a story that you continue to tell yourself. Change the narrative. And the moon, having this conversation with Chiron, is going to activate, going to trigger us to do exactly that. We are changing the narrative. And in that moment, we kind of cut back to Mercury, who is going to help us change that narrative. Why? Because Mercury rules over our mental plane, rules over the inner dialogue. that we tell ourselves. And Mercury, who is in Cancer right now, very connected to nurturing ourselves back to a place of emotional safety and stability, bumps into Saturn. Now, do you think this conversation is going to go well? I'm going to just put myself out there and say, nope, not so much. Saturn is kind of on a trip right now. He's repeating everything to Mercury that he just repeated and tried to put the scare tactic into when he bumped into the moon. And we know how that went. How did it go? Well, it empowered us to do everything that Saturn said that we couldn't. We're kind of on a trip right now. We are pushing forward. We don't care about the challenges. We don't care about the obstacles. We are ready to step up, to accept responsibility for our actions, and especially telling ourselves the narratives in which we've been telling ourselves. So Mercury bumping into Saturn, Saturn goes on his spiel. Can't do this. You shouldn't do that. You're never going to be this. You're never going to be that. We have to remember that the Saturn energy is a little bit of a negative Nancy, very connected to the masculine energy in our lives. Maybe this will trigger something for you and a flashback of something that your father did or father said or the masculine mentor in your energy did to you. This is a trauma response. This is a pain trigger and activator in order for us to see where it is that, yes, we have been repeating these storylines in our head, keeping us in a victim mindset, and where it is now that we are going to nurture ourselves back to a place of safety and stability. How do we do that? We pour kindness into ourselves. We rewrite the narrative. We encourage, we support, we empower. We rewrite the script. And in this moment is a beautiful moment because Mercury, of course, changing the game in our mental state, in the way that we're communicating now with this empowered version of ourselves. The moon goes ahead and bumps into Pluto, its ruler. Again, Pluto rules over the Scorpio energy, death, destruction, power. And so the moon in Scorpio bumping into Pluto, who is retrograde in Capricorn, this is a potential aha moment where we shift out of that old mental narrative, where we shift out of that heart space, that vibration that has kept us imprisoned, that has created blocks and obstacles and walls preventing us from truly being who it is we were designed and destined to be. We are on one right now. We are on something fierce. And this will essentially push us to a breaking point where we create a brand new set of rules that we are now going to operate by in our heart, in our head. And when that happens, when that transformation takes place, you best believe it's only days away of actually seeing that energy manifest in your physical realm. This is a great potential to see a certain death to the realizations, to the narratives, to the pain, to the storyline. Is it going to happen overnight and you're going to wake up the next day and never thinking about it again? Absolutely not. But when you start rewriting the script, it gets a little bit easier every day. It processes in your body in a different way. The cellular memories that you have stored up in your physical body, they start getting broken down, making space for the new information, for the new light codes, for the new downloads to infiltrate, to take over, purging those old narratives, those old scripts for good. And this is a beautiful thing because Mars, who is the co-ruler over the moon in Scorpio, bumps into Neptune. So we have to remember that Mars, of course, is the god of war. He wants nothing more than to take action. He wants to move forward. He doesn't want to look back. He's out on the battlefield just to swing in that sword, right? He doesn't care what gets in his way because he's going to cut through it. Doesn't matter. Mars is still very much in Leo, fired up on passion and on desire, really following his heart, really going after what it is that he desires and not allowing anything to get in his way. And he bumps into Neptune, who of course is retrograde in Pisces. And this is a very good opportunity for us to bump heads in ourselves and recognize where it is that maybe we've been pushing forward just for the sake of having some kind of change, some kind of movement. We need to check in with our dream state again, with the greater, grander vision that we're now holding for ourselves, that we are making efforts towards. We really have to align with our intuition at this point. Of course, Neptune retrograde in Pisces is all about listening to our intuition, all about connecting to our higher selves. This is a little bit of a realization that, you know what, Mars needs just a little bit of a reminder of what it is that we're wanting to create, what it is we want to move forward to. There is a certain point where Mars, especially in Leo, all fired up and very passionate about going after what it is that his heart wants and what it is that he desires, where he's just out on the battlefield swinging willy-nilly. You know what I mean? He's not even going in the right direction at this point. He's just happy to be moving. So we need to kind of check in with ourselves and realize that we have to balance the scales again. We have to reel it in. We're not telling Mars to put the sword away and to, stand still. But what we're asking him is to kind of stop, close his eyes, take a deep breath, remember, the direction that we're wanting to take, remember the vision that we're trying to create here, and to open his eyes and recalibrate the direction in the battlefield in which he is moving to and what he is cutting through. And there's a lot of lies and delusions and deception that he's cutting through right now because, of course, Neptune in Pisces, even if he wasn't in a retrograde, is the lies, is the deception, is the darkness, the shadow part of ourselves that we've created in order to keep ourselves safe, in order to, make sure that we are still living in a dream realm with the lies that comfort us at night and still, instead of accepting the truth for what it is. So we have a little bit of a learning lesson here, a little bit of a realignment happening here in order for us to be exerting our energy, focusing on our wants, needs, and desires without just, hitting the battlefield and swinging that sword in any kind of direction. We want to take action that matters. In this moment, the moon opposes Uranus. Now, I'm going to tell you, an opposition isn't so good. It's, you're standing in a boxing ring and you're staring your opponent down. There is that, the sway that the boxers do back and forth, just waiting to see who's going to make the first move, who's going to make that jab. Well, the Uranian energy is in Taurus right now. The Uranian energy is a zap, an aha moment, a download of information from the cosmos. This is asking us to act as the observer, to see how everything is connected, everything is at play, to really take into consideration all aspects, all information, all details. The moon in Scorpio, sitting across from its great opponent, Uranus in Taurus, really wants to shake up our lives. And Lord knows we've had a lot of revealing information up until now, but this creates an inner conflict in us because we have to be uncomfortable in order for us to make a change. And right now there's a huge spotlight on the inner work that we're doing, on the shadow work that we're doing. And Uranus wants us to see the bigger, broader picture. And right now we're so fixated on the new information, on the new details, on the new realizations that we just had, especially where it is that we've just cleansed ourselves of an old victimized narrative, that we're a little bit hesitant to be standing in the ring with Uranus right now. But that's okay, because the sun comes to our rescue and the sun jumps in front of us in the ring and goes and has an aspect, a conversation with Uranus. And it goes something like this. The sun, of course, is still in Cancer, wrapping up its final days in Cancer season. And the sun in Cancer, stepping in front of the moon in Scorpio, says, hey, listen, this fight isn't going to get us anywhere. We can't be at war within ourselves if we're going out to war to try and unify the collective, right? There's a lot of us right now are going through the process that we call slaying the dragon. And it's when you recognize the divide within. It's when you recognize the narrative in your head, in your heart, in your soul that tells you why you shouldn't, why you're not good enough, why you'll never be. All that negative Nancy narrative, that's your ego talking. And it's talking so loud that you can't hear your soul speak. And what your soul is trying to say is, listen, you can't divide the darkness from the light. You can't divide the pain from the pleasure. You have to unify it. You have to bring them together. You have to integrate them. You have to find balance in between the two. You can't be at war with yourself because that is a disempowerment The only way that you can stand truly in your power and have all the control over your own energy and over yourself is recognizing the darkness and pulling the light from it. Recognizing the pain and turning that into power. It's not about cutting off the ego. It's not about cutting off the darkness and the negative narrative. It's about integrating it. There's a lot of power that comes from pain, that comes from hate, that comes from darkness. Why would we want to cut ourselves off from that? It is in great moments of change and transformation that we have to dig deep in our anger, in our frustrations, in our oppression, in order to rise up and to make a change, to free ourselves from suffering. And so the sun stepping in to have this conversation with Uranus kind of sheds a light on what it is that we're doing for ourselves. We're recreating boundaries. We're doing what's right for ourselves. We're doing what's right for our families. We are reserving the best parts of our energy for us right now, because if we go ahead and keep half-assing and giving half of our energy away, nobody's getting the best of us. We're not getting the best for us. We're not pouring in, cups of others. You can't pour from a half cup. You can't. It doesn't make sense. So the sun in Cancer is all about implementing those boundaries in order to take care of ourselves. And that Uranian energy, of course, wants to wake us up, wants to shake us up, wants to have an aha moment. And in that moment, when they come together and they say, listen, we've just gone through a huge emotional realization here. We're empowered. We are moving forward. We need to balance ourselves before we go ahead and grasp the greater, grander vision of what it is that you want to do here. In that moment, the moon goes ahead, jumps out of that ring, and alongside of that boxing ring, Chiron is there, that wounded healer. And the moon in Scorpio says to Chiron, the sun just jumped in and saved my ass from going head to head with Uranus. Uranus wants me just to continue to change at accelerated rates, and I need a little bit of time to realize what it is that I just transformed, to settle in to the new boundaries that I set for myself. I need to have a little bit of time to integrate all the realizations of the shadow part of myself that I just realized before I can move on. And Chiron says, you know what? You did what was best for you. And that's what the sun in Cancer is in there trying to explain to Uranus right now is we have to do what's best for us right now. We have to nurture ourselves back to a place of safety and stability right now. Of course, Chiron, yes, he is exposing our wounds, but I think that at this particular point, we've kind of seen the wounds that we're looking to heal at this point. And those wounds are of victimhood. They are of pain. They are of trauma. They are of lies, deception, corruption, betrayal. We know what it is that we have to heal. But in this moment, Chiron kind of leans on us as the healer in which he is and says, listen, you got this. One baby step at a time. You cannot, and let me just take a moment to emphasize this sentence. I want you to listen very clearly. You cannot heal decades worth of trauma in one day. You can't do it in one night. Hell, I would be impressed if you could do it in 1 year. It is a stage. It is a process. It is a spiral stepping stone that we have to go through. We acknowledge the pain. We realize it. We make a choice. We move forward. Just when we think that we've healed it, it's going to be triggered again. That's how we heal things. There are events that continuously get triggered for us in our lives to see whether or not we actually healed from it or not. In most cases, there's still a little bit of healing left to do. So with this energy here today, I want to just remind you that yes, we can be on a very serious role of recognizing the pain and the trauma that we want to release, that we want to heal, but you can't do it all in one day. Give yourself credit where credit is due. Give yourself a moment to rebalance, to restabilize. And trust me, you will know when it's the time to go ahead and push again, to move to the next level, to strip away the next layer, to dive in to the next level of darkness.